Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Donald Trump's Department of Justice announced this evening that former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted by a grand jury on 2 counts, making a false statement and obstruction. Now, the charges stem from Comey's testimony before Congress back on September 30th, 2020, and that specific date is very important because the statute of limitations on these charges is 5 years, which means the last possible date to charge Comey with this crime, lying during that testimony, would be September 30th, 2025. That is next Tuesday. In a statement, the brand new U.S. attorney prosecuting Comey, Lindsay Halligan, fresh on the job, having never, ever prosecuted a single case, wrote, quote, "The balance of power is a bedrock principle of our democracy. It relies upon accountability and a forthright presentation of facts from executive leadership to congressional oversight," misspelling the word principle. In a post on social media, Attorney General Pam Bondi said today, quote, "Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people." FBI Director Kash Patel said, quote, "For far too long, previous corrupt leadership and their enablers weaponized federal law enforcement, damaging once proud institutions and severely eroding public trust." Of course, that is exactly what is happening here. Donald Trump's administration and the enablers around it are very clearly and forthrightly abusing federal law enforcement in a way that we have not ever seen, at least since Nixon and probably before then, to punish political opponents, people who say things they don't like, people who have taken political actions they don't like, or law enforcement actions they do not like. Trump can barely even bring himself to deny that he is personally directing these investigations and indictments.
It seems like an indictment on James Comey is imminent. Would this be the first step in accountability for pushing the hoax of Russia, along with Barack Obama involved as well?
Well, I can't tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. You have very professional people headed up by the Attorney General, and Todd Blanche, and Lindsay Halligan, who's a very smart, good lawyer, very good lawyer. They're going to make a determination. I'm not making that determination. I think I'd be allowed to get involved if I want, but I don't really choose to do so. I can only say that Comey's a bad person. He's a sick person. I think he's a sick guy, actually. He did terrible things at the FBI. But I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Okay, I want to be crystal clear here. All of the reporting we have, and we're going to have one of our own reporters who first broke this story, indicates that when Donald Trump says, "I don't know, I have no idea," that that's a lie, that he's lying about that. That was him today in the Oval Office, because we know that he has been directing this behind the scenes and, in fact, often publicly. This case against Comey is being brought in the Eastern District of Virginia. The previous U.S. attorney there, a career prosecutor, a guy chosen by Trump named Eric Siebert, a guy who had a good working relationship with Emil Bovee, who was the number 3 at Department of Justice, who prosecuted immigrant gangs like the president wanted. Well, he was pushed out last week. And the reason he was pushed out, in part, is because Siebert opposed bringing charges against Comey. And because of that, he was then swiftly replaced with the new U.S. attorney, Lindsay Halligan, who we just mentioned. Now, Lindsay Halligan is a Florida insurance attorney with no prosecutorial experience. She was once Trump's personal lawyer. Halligan was sworn in on Monday, and I have to say, today is a big day for Lindsay Halligan, who has now secured her first ever indictment. She went 2 for 3. The grand jury rejected one of the charges, but she's never done that before, so it's a big professional milestone for Lindsay Halligan today to get these 2 indictments because she's never, ever, ever done that before. It's now Thursday. James Comey has now been indicted, just like she was obviously appointed to do. It's clear as day what's happening here, right? In his first term, Trump tried to get James Comey to turn the historically independent FBI into a tool to protect his friends and punish his enemies. Specifically, he wanted Comey to drop the investigation against Trump's former national security advisor, Mike Flynn, for lying to the FBI. And now, 8 years later, Trump's new Department of Justice is going after Comey, they say, for lying to Congress, but really it looks like because the president has it out for him. Carol Lennox, an MSNBC investigative reporter. She was the first to report that Comey may be indicted along with Ken Delanian, and she joins me now. You know, Carol, the temptation when this news breaks and we have an indictment in front of us is to sort of go through the facts and the details here. But to me, that's a small part of a story that is much larger in context here because of you and Ken's great reporting about how we got to this point. As the person that reported out, how significant is this moment?
I'll use the words, Chris, that prosecutors and federal investigators are saying to me tonight, which is simply chilling. Chilling because a seasoned prosecutor who was appointed by the Trump administration, chosen by Donald Trump and his allies, looked at the facts in this case and said there wasn't a sufficient reasonable basis to bring it and was resisting bringing it, was pressured to resign or be forced out, thrown out on the curb, and he chose to resign. Days later, a person with no prosecutorial experience is the U.S. attorney, and these charges are brought. What's important here for people to understand is that prosecutors have a duty not just to see if they can get 23 people to say, yes, we agree with a one-sided version and we will indict this person. The duty is to bring cases only when you can sustain a conviction and when it is righteous. And in this case, there's serious questions about whether this is either a righteous case or has the facts that can sustain a conviction.
On that note, I mean, one of the details, which is like a sort of asterisk, but I think is a very big one, is it appears that they were only able to secure 2 of 3 charges from a grand jury. Again, the grand jury process is incredibly favorable to prosecution. They don't hear the other side. The standard is not, beyond a reasonable doubt, obviously. Rejecting charges before a grand jury is extremely rare, but has become more common under this Department of Justice. And even today, in this case, it appears 1 of the 3 charges was rejected by the grand jury.
That's right. And Chris, to be fair, we do not know what that 3rd charge was.
Correct.
Ken and I reported when we were reporting and breaking the news that his indictment was, or the attempt to indict him was imminent and would likely come today. When we were reporting that, we heard that there were 2 theories of this case that witnesses were being asked about and that were being pursued, at least by Lindsay Halligan and maybe 1 or 2 other prosecutors in the office. And that was, 1, that he had lied in his September 2020 testimony to the Senate when asked whether or not he had authorized a leak about an investigation to anyone. And then the second was that there was a question about his handling of classified information or handling of a classified document. I'm not saying that's what the 3rd charge is,
right,
but it is something that was being asked about and pursued. And now here we are with a third criminal charge we don't know about that was declined. And of course, the 2 charges here, Chris, just to reemphasize them, are false statements to Congress and then obstruction of a congressional proceeding by providing those false statements.
I want to just, we just got a video that has been posted, I believe, to Instagram by James Comey, of course, the former FBI director who has just been indicted. I think we have that ready to roll if you want to just take a look.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
Well, that was James Comey posting to Instagram. He was quoting there a memo written by his daughter, Maureen Comey, who was a prosecutor in the New York, Southern District of New York, where she starting to prosecute Jeffrey Epstein and successfully prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell. She was fired, Carol, with no cause given. She's filed a lawsuit for that. But interesting there, the citation of his daughter and quoting her departing memo.